We do a mic check? Okay. Miles,
Sure.
can you and Judith do a mic check?
Check, check.
Check, check.
Check. Check.
Close the curtains, yeah. I can that much anyway. Good afternoon and welcome back again to Seminary of the Southwest in Austin, Texas and our annual Alumni Convocation and Blandy Lectures. I'm Micah Jackson. I'm the Assistant Professor of Preaching here at the seminary, and I also serve as Dean of Community Life, and I will be the convener today for this discussion of church planting. The actual title is New Communities and Green Fields, a response by the Episcopal Diocese of Texas to create Christian community in a time of cultural change. Under the leadership of the Bishop of Texas, the Right Reverend Andy Doyle, who was on the earlier panel, if you were watching that by the stream, the Diocese of Texas has entered into a time of reflecting on green fields, mission opportunities that are being presented to us as a result of changes in the cultural landscape, demographic shifts, an explosion of opportunities to explore new meaning, and changes in the language that we use to talk about God and things of value in our human lives. The spiritual hunger around the church is deep, and we believe in the church that the response to it should be the same food that it has always been, the food of the gospel, but presented in a new way, that we can now communicate this gift to the world because of what we have to give and the way that it's being changed. And so this will require shifts in language that we use in worship, in programs, in formation, because it is no longer clearly understood by everyone as it used to be, or at least we imagine it once was. One response that the Diocese of Texas has made to this new missionary reality is to plant several new communities in as many green fields as possible that can speak to the way that community experiences God. 4 such communities in the Austin area have already been planted, and their planters are here with us today on the panel. So today we have with us Miles Brandon, Judith Lero, Kelly Kuntz, and Alex Montez. And they will be with us to share how their communities were formed and how they have formed those communities to be an expression of the gospel that can be heard and incarnated in a new and particularly relevant way. So thank you all for being here with us. Let's begin with that question. We'll start and just go down the panel and tell us who you are, a little bit about your community, and sort of how old it is and how it got started.
Well, again, I'm Miles Brandon, and it's great to be with you. I have been blessed to be a part of the planting of a new Episcopal church to serve far northwest Austin, which is really a growing part of Austin, sort of where Cedar Park, Round Rock, and Northwest Austin converge. The mention that Micah made of demographical shifts, I think that our community is in part a response to that. For those of you that are from Austin, you'll know that's actually the fourth fastest area for population growth in the United States, that part of far northwest Austin. And so the reality is, as a church, are we going to acknowledge where the world is growing and be present there in some sort of meaningful way? The name of our community is St. Julian of Norwich Episcopal Church, Julian, I'm sure many of you have run into Julian in seminary or in your own reading, but for us, she's become a really powerful patron for us to form community around. One, because we have a book that she wrote that we can sort of be in dialogue with. So it sort of feels like a living relationship, and a lot of our formational documents have come out of her writings. We have a rule of life at St. Julian's, and our vision statement came from some wounds she asked Christ for. Not with wound language, but anyway. Anyway, so we're St. Julian's in far northwest Austin, and I'll stop there with my introduction. But I'm sure we'll talk more about us in a minute.
I'm Judith, and also happy to be here. St. Hildegard's is a small, intentional community that grew up within St. George's, which isn't far from here. And we have been worshiping on Sunday afternoons, following a call to be a contemplative, peace and justice loving, intimate faith community. And we also have a learning community that's called the Servant Leadership School that reaches beyond our own membership to serve others who aren't a part of our church, but reach out to others who don't have a church or to other faith communities. And the school goes deeper than what most adult education classes do. It gives a place, space for participants to bring their questions. We ask people to write papers and to connect what they're reading in the classes with their lives. And so it's been a very transformational space. And the thing that's really guided us has been, how do we live a baptismal ecclesiology and ministry? I've been on the staff at St. George's since 1984, and I find that when I was reading Carol Howard Merritt's language of loyal radical was what describes me. And I think it's important to say that I'm not an outside agitator, that my being radicalized actually happened in seminary and in the diocese and in scripture and paying attention to Jesus. I have acted on a call for about the last 20 years to recreate the church as a vibrant expression of Christ's body in the world. Excuse me, a lot of allergies today. In seminary, right here, I was awakened to the need for language that was whole and that would liberate our experience of the living God that we know in Jesus. And it was here for the first time that I experienced prayer book fundamentalism. So I was familiar with biblical fundamentalism, and so that was something new. And I've tried to live out my ministry in the creative space of being faithful to the Episcopal Church by moving out into this space that the 1979 prayer book gives, which is called Rite 3. And with profound respect for Anglican liturgy that shapes all we do, it gives us a space to be responsive to the Spirit in a very participatory way. And hopefully that it will benefit the church, in some ways that our experimentation will end up being fruitful. And I was associate rector in 1995 when I heard a call to begin a community that was growing up out of the parish. And in 2012, we're still singing and dancing and pointing the way. We sing original masses that were written and composed in-house, and dance is a regular part of our liturgies. In our commitment to nonviolence and social justice and loving the earth, we point the way. And I'm still on staff as associate rector and enjoy the support of the staff and vestry, and Kevin Schubert, our rector. When we started in '96, we were ahead of the times, and so we really didn't know what we were doing. So it was like muddling in the dark. And David Hoster, the rector of St. George's, and I both took second jobs for 2 years to be able to birth St. Hildegarde's as what I learned is called a nesting community. And I didn't know that until I read Carol Howard Merritt's book. But through David's protection and belief in us, that was the core. My compensation grew after those first couple of years, but it remained below average. Yet I feel rich because the work itself is so deeply satisfying. Tension within the parish and with Bishop Payne in our early years was stressful at times, and yet it ended up being creative as we worked through issues with respect. And I have great love for Bishop Payne. Both parish and diocese gave us just enough room to survive and sometimes flourish over the years. Often flourish, I think. We've been on the margins of the contemporary church, and yet our life of contemplation and community and social justice is ancient and at the core of Christ's life in the world. We've found humanity, compassion, courage, and joy as we've lived into our vision, as we embody a participatory, engaged expression of church. We've stayed small, growing and contracting, and our true growth has come from the transformation of our own lives and as sending people out to do ministry in the world, sometimes going to seminary and founding creative ministries in other parts of the world. So I think that's the introduction. Thank you.
Kelly Kuntz with the Front Porch here in Austin, and the Front Porch is kind of an odd duck even among the communities here, as my fashion statement today would suggest. I told Miles I should have worn a collar, and he said, but you're representing the Front Porch. The Front Porch is unusual also because we're the new kid on the block. We actually have not even started gathering. We begin this Sunday evening, September 30th, our weekly gatherings at the Victory Grill on East 11th. On the other hand, the Front Porch has a rather significant history. So the Front Porch has been around in some form or fashion for about the last 12 years, I think. So in 2000, two priests, Stephen Kinney and Jimmy Bartz, got a group of their friends and colleagues together to have salon-style conversations in an art gallery over on 6th Street. Miles was part of that original group. I stopped in a time or two as well back in the day. And over the years, that morphed. The Front Porch became a secular nonprofit focused on community building by fostering conversations about things that matter. So Steve and his colleague Patricia Boyce would go out and they would have Front Porch events once a month, once every other month perhaps, in borrowed spaces, art galleries, cafes, bookstores. And they would bring in a presenter, often, not always, an artist, a musician, a painter, filmmaker, etc. And they would present their work, and then they would have facilitated conversation around and about that work. And what they discovered over time was that more and more often those conversations tilted toward questions of meaning and purpose and belonging, tilted toward questions of faith and spirituality and theology even. And so over the years, Steve had an interest in sort of bringing out the faith piece of the Front Porch, articulating that in a way that he had not before. I had an interest at the same time in doing something a little bit different, and I was looking for a new way to sort of experiment with articulating the gospel for those who might not feel welcome in our traditional parishes for whatever reason. And so Steve and I began our conversations about a year and a half ago. It seemed like a natural fit for me to come on board, and we presented our proposal to Bishop Doyle last January, not really knowing what we should be. We wanted to be an Episcopal entity, but should we be a fellowship? Should we be a mission? Bishop Doyle suggested that we structure ourselves as a parochial mission, much in the way that a parochial school functions. That's how we function. So we have our own set of bylaws. We have our own board of directors. We're a parochial mission of All Saints Episcopal Church, which is just over here on 27th Street. And the rector, Mike Adams, serves as the chairman of the board of the Front Porch. Our ultimate goal is to raise enough money to open a nonprofit cafe and event space here in town. We really want to be sort of a mission out into the community. Mike Adams sort of describes the Front Porch as our ideal is not to bring people to Christ, but to try to bring Christ and kingdom community to the people. That's kind of how we see ourselves. But in the meantime, while we raise funds, we are going to begin gathering at the Victory Grill on East 11th Street, as I said, this Sunday, and we can talk more in a bit about sort of what we're going to be doing on those Sunday evenings.
I have my own. Yeah, I have my own microphone. Yeah. My name is Alex Montes, and I'm the, like they said earlier, I'm the vicar of St. Mary Magdalene Episcopal Church in Manor. Does anybody know where Manor is at? Anybody here know Manor? In northwest of Boston, you know, I think it was Bishop Don Wimberly who asked me back in 2007 in our clergy conference to, you know, the idea of starting a church in Manor. I didn't even know where that was at then, and even when I came for an interview here in December of 2007 with the ministry or the congregational development team of the diocese, I still didn't know, and my plan was to drive from here to visit my parents in Houston and drive through Manor. And when I realized, you know, where's Manor? I had already passed it. I was already in the next town, Elgin, so that's how my introduction to Manor. From the beginning, the idea was for this community to be multi-ethnic. I was born in Peru. I'm first generation here in the United States. My wife is Vietnamese. She came when she was 5 years old. So already in my own home, you know, there's a multi-ethnic aspect or culture, a new culture in my home, and so that attracted me very much. I didn't know how I was going to look, how I was going to sound, but I accepted the call to come in and do this work. It was named St. Mary Magdalene. As a matter of fact, Miles was with me in the office because I was like having a hard time figuring out like what name can we give this community, and I used to joke around to say, you know, I'm looking for a tortilla or something to come out with some image or some bread to show me, you know, exactly what should I name or what is this church gonna look like. But Miles suggested St. Mary Magdalene, and it just fit. It fit because of the transformation or the impact that Jesus had on Mary Magdalene. And I can identify with that. And I can say, you know, to other people, I've seen the Lord. I've seen the Lord. And so that's how we, you know, that's how we got our name. And after spending about 9 months as an interim priest in the Southwest congregation here called San Francisco de Asís, I eventually got to start my work of St. Mary Magdalene with a couple of families that I knew that I was very scared to call. But as I was taking a break from my work at San Francisco de Asís, I just got, you know, I said like, Lord, you know, help me. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to call these people to come and meet in my home. And our first meeting was in my house in January 10th, 2010, with two families and myself and my family. And we even counted the dogs, you know, just to, you know, pick up our attendance on the first. And then it went down the next Sunday, you know. During the prep time that I had here in Austin, I'm not from Austin. I grew up in Houston, and then after seminary I went to Waco. So this was my first experience of living here in Austin and going to all the different churches to get a feel of how this whole area looks like, and to kind of let people know who I am. And maybe attract some people to come and help me because I didn't know anybody here in this area. Unfortunately, I didn't get I don't know if it's unfortunate or fortunately, I didn't get no takers during that time of that work. I think they were excited. They were going to be praying for me, and you know they were, you know, saying, "Oh man, you know, go for it." And I said, "Thank you." And what what emerged from this situation is that the people that came to be part of St. Mary Magdalene were the people that I least expected to be working with. And even though I was getting involved in different aspects of Manor, I was in the Manor Lions Club, in the Chamber of Commerce, and different boards in the area. None of the people that I was meeting would want to come. You know, they would say, "Yeah, I'll go," but you know, coming to a home maybe it's very intimidating. I don't know. It's the intimacy that, of having services or gatherings in a house. But these people started inviting their friends who didn't go to church, and that's how the core group of this St. Mary Magdalene came to be. And I'll talk a little bit more afterwards about our work there.
Thank you all. This project. Okay, here it is. The project that each of you is working on is sort of intended to incarnate the gospel in a particular cultural context. So could you say a little bit about your interactions with that cultural context? When, you know, Alex, you talked about going there and discovering that it wasn't really the one that you thought you were going to find. So if each of you could talk about the way that you imagined your community growing, how it actually grew, and the way that your community is interacting with the demographics and the culture that you're finding.
I think that St. Julian's, again, is in far northwest Austin. It's sort of the first round of suburbs around Austin. A lot of the people that live in that part of Austin, they're younger. They have children. A lot of them work in high tech or are really comfortable with technology in general. I remember thinking when I met with a young couple when we were just recruiting a team to begin a conversation about what this church would look like, and having a conversation with them about kind of the front porch idea of having a space that operated as a worship space, but also operated during the rest of the week as a gathering space for music and for art and for different sorts of cultural activities, but in a church, and people knew they were meeting in a church, and that said something about what we value and gave them familiarity with a place that was a church. And was talking about this, and they stopped me. I was getting really excited like I am right now talking about it, and they said, "Is there a playground in there? Because if there isn't, I don't know if we can come." And so that has been something that we've thought about. And so we've said one of our core values from the beginning has been to be a multi-generational community, and we do a lot of things together, sort of cross-generational. But we also try to be aware of the needs of different sort of people uniquely, children, youth, adults. Technology also really important to us, and in the way that we talk to each other and the way that we do worship. We sort of call the experience of worship at St. Julian's is sort of, we call it sort of future ancient worship. And what we mean by that is that we're very much rooted in both the contemplative practices of 2,000 years of church history and the sacramental life of our church, but supplementing it with opportunity for self-guided experiences in worship, with the use of video in worship, with the use of tazé and quiet times for meditation, all this sort of mixed together that gives this sort of strange feel where the music team might as easily be performing at the offertory something really sort of traditional Anglican anthem or something from Coldplay. Sometimes our music is sung and sometimes it's recorded. And we have this time after worship called open space, which is the self-guided time I'm talking about. Essentially what we're saying is, though we want to own technology, we also believe that we're living in a world that is moving us and sort of requiring our attention in ever more rapid ways as we move from one thing to the next, and that open space in the liturgy in some ways can act that way as we move from readings to sermon to creed to prayers to confession to communion, but to stop and say, we're just not gonna do anything for 10 minutes, and instead people go and paint or walk a labyrinth or go have a dialogue about the sermon. I never go to that room. Off to the side, or just in some way guide their experience, or sit with an icon or light a candle. There's several different options, and so that's some of the things that we've done to sort of that seem to be speaking to people, that seem to be translating to people. One of the things that's great about being Episcopalian in our Anglican heritage is I think the most incredible thing that Cranmer did weren't the words he chose, but he made them English, the language that people spoke. So we've been about translating from our very beginning. That's what's unique about us. And so I just feel like we continue to have that opportunity today, and I think we can. Was it Mike that mentioned if I was part of a church, I'd be Episcopalian? I think that's because when we talk about salvation, we talk about things like wholeness and health. We don't just talk about where you spend eternity, smoking or non-smoking. I mean, you see what I'm saying? And so I think that is encompassed in our willingness to, again, use popular music and say that we can claim God in the midst of this popular music because God's everywhere. It all belongs to God. We can call a Mumford and Sons concert a religious experience, and we can use their music and worship. And so those are some of the things that and music is another important part of St. Julian's. We have 2 new music ministers, and rather than sort of going through traditional means of looking for seasoned Episcopal musicians, we went out and found 2 local Austin singer-songwriters named Winnie Colonna and Aaron Ivey, who are doing music at St. Julian's. Wendy does music at St. Julian's on Sunday, and then she has the Tuesday night happy hour slot at the Continental Club after Tony Price every Tuesday night. And and I feel like that's also a part of trying to engage the culture. And Anglicans, Episcopalians love music. That's always been a part of us. So again, it's sort of right up our alley, if you will. So I'll stop there for now.
Well, it's been so long that I can't remember what I expected when we started. But I really enjoyed the surprise and just watching things develop and come alive. I certainly didn't expect that we would be singing original masses. I can remember at St. George's as an assistant that I was shaking in my boots at the vigil when I sang The Light of Christ. And so it's meant growing in a way I never thought I would grow to sing in a very ordinary way, not as a great singer. And but there's something when we all gather around the altar and with the back and forth of presider and community that is an amazing experience. As Miles was talking about St. Julian, we've really experienced Hildegard's life and energy, and this September we're having the Sundays of September exploring and enjoying different parts of her heritage, and of course it's even more so this year when she's being made a doctor of the church, and the Roman Church is getting around to recognizing what we already recognized before, that she's a saint. So we find in our life the prophetic part of her life, the healing power, art and music. At her feast day, we did a reading of her Ordo Virtutum and enjoyed that. And then last Sunday, the Hildy girls came, and we all sang Hildegard's chants together. So it's just been a very wonderful and creative time. And I think that I didn't really realize, I mean, it seems obvious after the fact that with God as creator, why wouldn't it just be amazingly transformative to experience the creativity at the heart of our liturgical life? And just kind of to sum it up, what we've done is just to take seriously liturgy as the work of the people. And we do it with teams who take responsibility for throughout the church year. And so there's, it's just brings in everybody with who wants to, with a way to shape and have input into what we're doing. So, Kelly?
I don't know anything about my community yet. I imagine when we launch on Sunday, and maybe for a few Sundays following that, we'll have a good number of folks who come out of interest and curiosity, perhaps Episcopalians who know me or Steve and want to support us and that sort of thing. But we imagine when the dust settles that our community will be peopled primarily, again, by the unchurched, the de-churched, the over-churched, the proverbial spiritual but not religious set, of which there are many here in Austin. And so, you know, it's a tricky thing to try to reach those folks, to try to get them to come in the door. We don't think of ourselves really as a church. We don't call ourselves a church, and yet we certainly don't hide our Christian convictions or our Episcopal connections. You can go on our website and we talk about all of that. But again, if you foreground that piece, then the folks you're trying to reach are never going to step in the door, and yet there's always that sort of, we have to be very careful about that sort of bait and switch thing, you know. So people come in, oh, the front porch, cool place to hang out. Oh, you know, you want to talk to me about Jesus. So that's real. I mean, it's a real tension that we're sort of always wrestling with, and I think we'll continue to wrestle with, just given the nature of our sort of target audience, if you will. But the way we go about, I think, addressing or engaging our context in a number of ways. The place where we gather, choosing the Victory Grill as a place to gather. We could have chosen a church, we could have chosen a school, as many sort of emerging congregations do. We wanted to meet somewhere that was, in East Austin, we wanted to meet somewhere that was, kind of had a cool vibe, and the Victory Grill is an amazing place. If you don't know about it, it was opened in 1945. It was a very prominent stop music venue on the so-called Chitlin Circuit during the days of segregation. And you know, everybody who's anybody in blues and jazz has played there. Ike and Tina Turner, James Brown, Etta James, Janis Joplin, you know, the list goes on, and the place just drips with that history. It's just a fabulous, wonderful space. So we're going to meet there in that public space. It's sort of neutral ground for folks. And we have two components to our Sunday evening service. There is what we're calling the Sunday Salon, which is our version of worship. And then that's at 6 p.m. At 8 p.m. we have the Sunday Stage, which is really sort of a front porch event, as I described it a little bit earlier in our conversation, where we bring in an artist or a musician to present their work, then have conversation around that. The Sunday Salon will be structured in a very sort of very loose liturgy. We'll have some singing, and we'll have a community dialogue around a piece of scripture. We'll have some intentional silence, a little bit more singing, and that's pretty much it. We will begin, people will come in, we'll have some good bread and some good wine on a table. They'll be invited to share that bread and that wine as they get to know one another. It will not be consecrated, so there will not be a Eucharist, but it will be, we feel, Eucharistic. We will be upfront and forthright about the symbolism there, what we're trying to communicate and what that means. And then we'll gather to sing. We have some professional musicians, a trio that's coming in to lead us in some traditional gospel music and sort of a bluegrass style. Again, this is sort of intentional given who we're trying to reach, because that kind of Americana bluegrass vibe is sort of very hot and hip here in Austin. And to sing traditional gospel music offers a way to sort of use religious language without turning people off, because these same folks will go and they'd never open one of our hymnals, they may never come to one of our churches, but they'll listen to Alison Krauss and Gillian Welch and, you know, the Brother Where Art Thou soundtrack and whatnot, and it's the kind of music we're talking about. We're planning to have no screens, no books, no words whatsoever in the service, so we're trying to really go old school and kind of sit in a circle like you would maybe on a, a front porch, or around a campfire. The musicians will sit with us. They will play fully acoustic, no amplification, and people will just be invited to pick up and sing along when and where they can and where they want to. And the wonderful thing about that genre of music is, as you know, I mean, it's very repetitive, and the choruses are repetitive. So if people can't pick up the verses, they can at least pick up the choruses. And because we're going to be rotating those songs sort of in and out every week, we'll have a limited repertoire. Eventually, we hope that folks will just be able to join in and sing the whole thing. And then we'll read a passage of Scripture. I think in the fall we're going to be looking at Galatians. We're going to be looking at a sort of the theme of community, what makes for authentic and genuine community. How do we tear down the dividing wall, as Paul said. Actually, that was Ephesians, but that's kind of what we're looking at. How do we build community in the midst of our differences? We'll use Galatians as a lens to get into that conversation. So we'll read the text. The preacher of the week is not really more of a facilitator than a preacher. Might give 3 to 5 minutes of context, but then we'll open it up for conversation. So it really is a shared sermon in the deepest sense of the word. So we're imagining that as the community comes together, they are coming together to interpret this text as a community. It is a communal interpretation that will arise in the midst of our dialogue. That is what we hope. It's scary as hell. It's very, very dangerous to open up that kind of conversation, as I think you all will know if you've done it before. But it's also very, very exciting, and it gives people a sense of ownership and a safe space to come and to talk about what this means for them, and how does this inspire them, and where does this text trouble them, and what's great about it and what's terrible about it, and where does this strike them? We want to talk about that stuff and figure out what it means for each of us and what it means for us as a community and what it means for Austin and the world, etc. And we'll sing some more, and then we'll take a break. We'll have dinner from 6 to 7. They have a food trailer outside of the Victory Grill. They're going to be cooking their version of sort of Caribbean soul food mix. We'll have beer and wine available as well, and soft drinks and other things. And then we'll have our Sunday stage, and each week we'll have a different performer come in. Music is our theme for the fall. Probably in the spring we'll do art or literature, but we're going to have musicians coming in the fall, and they're not only going to be presenting and talking about their work, they're also going to be highlighting various organizations that assist Austin musicians in making a living, because despite being the live music capital of the world, as some of you know, making a living here in Austin as a musician is terribly, terribly difficult. So we have representatives coming from the Health Alliance for Austin Musicians, which helps musicians receive health care. We have representatives coming from SIMS, which they offer mental health and addiction recovery services for Austin musicians. John Pointer is kind of spearheading our campaign this fall, and he's going to be there numerous times. He's a great, great, amazing multi-instrumentalist. And he started an organization called patronism.com, which marries the patronage of the arts with crowdfunding. So you can go up and you can find Aaron Ivey or Wendy Colonna on the patronism.com site and support them. Give them $5 a month or $25 a month or whatever it may be to help support them in simply creating their art, because it's a difficult thing to do. All of this is leading up to a big event in December, a concert that we're going to have 10 to 15 patronism artists come and play, and the funds will benefit patronism.com and the Victory Grill. Victory Grill is in need of some renovations, so we're trying to give back there. But that's our sort of fall program. It's what we're trying to do, and I think you can kind of get a feel for what folks might be interested in what we have to offer.
Yeah. What time is it that you're going to be meeting? As I was saying in my introduction, is that the people that started becoming part of St. Mary Magdalene were not the people that what do you call it, the biography type of people that were going to be helping me in being in this bishops committee or whatever it's going to be that was going to go to the public as a whole to tell them about Jesus. I read Peter Rollins, and I heard him speak at certain times, and he talked about this way that we usually think about evangelism. One that is first you have belief, then you have behavior, and then belonging. You ask somebody, you believe in Jesus, and then if you believe in Jesus, then you need to change these things right here, this and that. And at the end, then you can be baptized and become part of this community. But he flips it the other way around when he says it should be belonging first, behavior comes later, and then also this belief in this Jesus that they're seeing on the people that are allowing them or inviting them to belong. It's just like in a family, when you're born, you're belonging from the get-go, and And you pick up things from your family, from everybody that's around. What kind of things they eat, what time they eat, what time they go to sleep, how they bathe. And then you're talking about the belief systems. They start sharing yours, and at some point when they become teenagers, they start, having some tension there. But eventually they come with their own understanding, and he has some of yours. I mean, that's and I really that was new to me. That was a new way of understanding, but I understood it in a way because it was my history too, my story, in the way that I seen God picking me up and telling me that He loves me even though I didn't deserve it or I hadn't done anything to belong. And I wanted these people to experience this as well. Opening your house, you have to do that. When you open your house, you gotta, I don't know how you guys take care of your walls and your floor and all those different things, or the rooms that you allow people to come in. But opening your house is, perhaps out of desperation, because I had the bishops, telling me when are you going to start, or what's the story on this thing, and you say, I gotta do something, so I'm gonna allow anybody to come in. I don't care. But what it did is it started transforming me. One of the things that Rollins also say is that, this whole journey in Christianism is really, we are becoming Christian. If we start looking at our own lives and all the different places where God is working, we continue to need this. We continue to have the need to be evangelized. And I was being evangelized with these people that were coming to my home. A lot of them didn't go to church before. And it just changed the way that I understood what this community was going to be about. And when I started asking these people, with the tattoos, they had different, that's a really cool tattoo right there, really cool colors and stuff like that. I mean, these guys had the prison tattoos, they have a different type of ink, a different type of shade. And I asked them, why didn't you go to church before? Why didn't you? And they started, telling among us, this, people look at me. I don't know what to do. Some of them had a lot of kids, which was cool because it was raising our number. But they say, my kids have never gone to church, and then you take them there, they start crying, they start making noises, and people, they start looking at you. And you feel like you need to, you don't want to come back because you don't feel embraced. So I asked, let's help me make this church the way that a church that you would like to come, that your friends would like to come. And I remember putting in my calendar, because we started in January 2010, put August 1st, Sunday. It's a school number, 8-1. It's a Sunday. This is when we're going to move somewhere public. And I started looking around, and it came out to be the Manor High School cafeteria. And I didn't know where we would be on August 1st. But that's the thing that I was telling everybody. Well, another thing is that they were all Latinos. Their language of preference was Spanish. I remember the first gathering we had was all in Spanish. But trying to sell this idea that it cannot be like this. It has to be at least some English, because the general public around us, I know my kids, they speak more English than Spanish or Vietnamese. And that's how it became these two language type of gatherings, even in my home, from the second time all the way to August 1st. And as I was saying, some days we have 9 people, some days we have 50, we have a cookout, we have 25 people, and the next Sunday we have 9 people, and so forth. Some of them get, being in trouble, they're very inconsistent. I remember that when we were getting closer to August, the people that have become this core group of this community, one of the main persons, I didn't hear nothing from them that whole weekend. I said, what's happening? He was in jail. And I had to spend that Saturday, before we had to lunch, trying to go over there and get him out of there. But I knew that something special about this community, because I was being changed, really. And we had this with 15 people that were really wanting to do this with me. We went to the high school, and all of a sudden we saw these people coming from Houston, from where my home church is San Mateo, St. Matthew's in Houston. And about 60 people from there came. They drove that morning, and they came in. I mean, they just went inside my house. I wasn't even expecting them. I also stressed out. Like, man, I got things to prepare. I need things to move. I need things to get ready. You know, I gotta just concentrate on what I'm gonna say and so forth. But I think what it did is just relax me, and I had to understand that God was walking with all of us. And when these people who, the part of this core group that came late even on that first gathering, I was going like, wow, how embarrassing in front of these 60 people that are coming to visit us, to support us, and I mean, my own people are not coming on time. But when they came, and these 60 people came around them and put their hands on them and prayed for all of us, saying, we pray that God is going to be with you so that you can tell others about this Jesus that you're being experiencing for these last 7 months. And that just had a big impact on them, that they just got so excited about, wow, is it going to be like this all the time? I had some musicians in line, I couldn't find them like you guys. I had to go to Craigslist and put in an advertisement. And on the week before, the guy just fell through, and then he had, so I called some people a couple of kids that I knew from that play. They don't. What is the place where they play with the woman that's gonna be the singer? The singer that's gonna be playing at St. Julian's. What place does she play?
Oh, Continental Club.
Yeah, this don't play it there. They play at the Oasis or the Maria Maria's. But but even the unchurched. I mean, I don't know how many laws or rules I was violating by doing this stuff. These weren't Christian musicians. They were going to be singing Christian lyrics, both in English and Spanish. And that's how we began. Now their families are coming to our church. Their families of these musicians. And now it's not only Latinos, because my core group was all Latino. Now we have African Americans, we have whites, we have from people that are professors at UT all the way to a former dancer at the local, I don't know the name, I don't know the name of the place. I see it when I drive on 290. Used to be called Pink Monkey. But that's the salad bowl that St. Mary Magdalene has become. A lot of people, a lot of people have the experience of always receiving, always having to have their hands open. I was seeing that when there's a line, you go very, very quickly to get in line because you're going to miss out on something. Our motto is experiencing and sharing God's generosity, because that's what I've experienced, and that's what they're experiencing. And now they get to not only be able to receive, but they're able to, even with some people that are lacking, because it's also socioeconomically, it's very diverse, this group that we have come together, they're able to give. The gift of not having a permanent space is that you have no excuse to not go out there. You have no excuse to not go into where the people are at. And we get to go because we have great musicians as well. And be able to be in the park and then play, and people come, they get to know who we are. And now these people are the people that have become part of St. Mary Magdalene. They're able to give rather than just receive. And to be able to experience that is transformational. It's transformational. It's just like what St. Mary Magdalene said. I have seen the Lord. I have seen the Lord. And that's what St. Mary Magdalene is about. And like I said at the beginning, I'm still being transformed. I'm still being evangelized. My eyes just continue to be open even more. And I give thanks to God for the generosity of the Diocese of Texas to have called me to do this. Because I thought I was bringing something really cool to the people, but actually I was receiving more from them now. And I know Jesus more because of them. That's all I have.
Thank you. Let's see if there's a question out there. If I can see out there through these lights. Yes?
It seems to me that all four of you are doing some pretty non-traditional kind of ministry. ability to overcome the fear of that unknown dark place, I think Judith described it as from time to time.
That's a great question. The question is about what feeds each of these people as they do this kind of non-traditional work and try to overcome some of the challenges of the work. What feeds you?
I would just say, I wanted to echo this if I had a chance to speak again, something Alex just said, and that is that I've never felt alone in this work, and there are a lot of different levels to that. It began with the incredible support of the diocese from the very beginning, who never left us alone and always checked in on us and gave us the resources we need and made sure we were gathering with each other. Alex and I met together every week for the first, I don't know, year to 18 months that we were in this work together just to pray and to share. And then the community became the people that supported me, the people that began to form. Likewise, we started with about 15 people in the basement of St. Matthew's Episcopal Church meeting on Sunday afternoons, and now we're over 100 active people. But that 15 people, just even there was a community that we were sort of in this journey together. And another aspect, I think, of St. Julian's, and I think of a lot of work that's being done in churches that are emerging in one way or another, is the power of storytelling. We began with those 15 people in the basement of St. Matthew's meet on Sunday afternoons. Before we spent about 6 weeks, maybe as many as 2 months, before we said one word about what this church would be, just telling our stories to each other. People would sign up for a Sunday and they would come and just tell their story to each other. And so by the time we even began to talk about St. Julian's, how we would worship, what we would value, what Christian education would look like, so on and so forth, we felt like we knew each other. We loved each other. We were committed to each other. We were going to do this thing together. And so I think that between the support provided from the outside, the seminary, the diocese, the support provided in the inside, from the depth of this community that was sort of forming to do this new, unique, and adventurous work together, I've never felt alone. That's just never been my experience. Beginning with and for me too, this has been a partnership for me with my wife, and so we've always been a pair. There was always at least 2 members of St. Julian's from the very beginning, never just one. And last thing is around that storytelling idea that continues to be true for us, and food is a big part of that. We eat together a lot.
I agree that I'm really fed just by everything that we do together, because instead of kind of dry committee meetings, we will gather to plan worship, and so we'll sit in silence together, and then we'll have a time of checking in about our lives. And it makes for longer meetings, but it also means that everything that we're doing is weaving community, and that really nourishes me. And then I also just take time for solitude, and but it doesn't feel like it's separate. It feels like it's all part of the whole. To just sit out in my backyard or wherever I'm sitting, and then later be with the community. So it's all very integrated, and it has sustained me all these years. So I'm very grateful.
I would echo what Miles said. In my situation, it's a little bit different in that the front porch has a staff of 3, and so I kind of jumped on board a moving train. Stephen Kinney's been doing this work for years, and if any of you know Stephen Kinney, he's sort of tirelessly energetic when it comes to life in general and when it comes to the front porch in particular. So he really sort of keeps me fired up, and I hope vice versa. But also I think what feeds me and keeps me excited about the front porch is this sort of quest for what's next. So, I mean, in my view, the risen Christ is out there. The Spirit is out there moving and doing all these things that in some ways we're not even aware of. And so we're sort of always on the hunt, trying to chase Christ down. And that's exciting. I mean, it's an adventure all the time. And so I love the sort of the newness and the novelty of trying to figure out where is Jesus happening out in the world.
Being in Manor, it's a small town. It could be, I remember one person told me it's a desert. Trying to convince me maybe to take another job, to do something else. It feels lonely. It felt lonely for a long time. I mean, I give thanks to God for Miles' friendship and his support. I admire him a lot. He's like he was saying about when we were talking about social media. He's very thoughtful, and he's an example. When he was going through the work of doing St. Julian's, so that having a person like that I could look up to, it was great to have, as well as the gatherings, the monthly gatherings. So every 3 months, right? Every 3 months that we gather with the other planters from the diocese, and the open policy that our bishops have for us and the rest of the staff of the diocese. But essentially, it's that the community that starts growing. I thought people will have it figured out when they get to a certain age. And because it's also multi-generational, this community that we're building. And when I see people that come in their 60s that haven't gone to church for 25 to 30 years, that was brand new to me. I thought, man, this is what you do, or something. You have found something. And I think that's the biggest encouragement that I get when I hear their calls, their emails, their texts, of what's happening in their lives, how they are grateful for not only for my family moving there, but because they see the way that we are being supported. They say, how can people be so generous? How can somebody think about sending or starting something like what we have right now here? And that feeds me a lot. To see the children, these children that I got to know them 2.5 years ago, and in my living room, and now they're in high school, some of them, and to be excited, like this past Sunday when we had all these different visitors. A couple of weeks ago we had a music at the park, where we had it in the local park where there 120 people came, and then we got some people that came this past Sunday, and when she looked around, she's 16 now, and she's saying, oh man, our community is so different. It's so different from when we began. That encourages me. It reminds me why we are there. And it just gets me more excited. And then to see the excitement of these young people, man, it's wow. That's like chicken and stuff like that. We eat a lot too. We eat every Sunday. One of the things that I did in my home is that I had food so they could stay and we get to know each other. And when we moved to the high school, I talked and said, I don't think we can do this, when we go, because when it starts growing, how can we cook? But our family, one of those people from the core group said, I think we should do it. And they have taken that ministry. I mean, they have the gift to be able to cook for a lot of people and, how to ration and all this stuff like that. And buy, for a good price, all the ingredients. And every Sunday, this is a Cuban guy. Who came on a raft. And he cooks. His wife is Mexican, so that you can see the fusion of food that we get, and and the sound of our services are like I say, both in English and Spanish. It might be weird to people, and some people may be like, oh my gosh, I want to get out of here. But that time of food is when people sit down that otherwise wouldn't be sitting together to talk, and they come back. Because of that, because they have found community, and we found that breaking the bread and the potato or the tortilla or whatever it is that we are.
That's great. The feeding of the spirit and the body at the same time.
That's right. I like that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all again. It's definitely come to our end of our time today. Thanks to all of you who are following along on Twitter and along the Ustream feed. Thanks to all of you who are present in the room, and again, thank you to our panel: Miles Brandon, Judith Lero, Kelly Kuntz, and Alex Montes. Thanks very much. Please join us back at 7 o'clock for our stream at the same address if you're watching it on the Ustream. for the live stream of Carol Howard Merritt's annual Blandy Lecture. Thank you.